Welcome, everybody. We are going to get started. My name is Abraham Bonowitz. I'm the Executive Director of Death Penalty Action, and we are waiting for Emmanuel to call in. Jeffrey, we're still waiting for Emmanuel, correct?
Yeah, we can go ahead and get started, and it looks like he'll be able to call in a few minutes.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start by sharing with you a video that has never been seen publicly before until just a moment ago when the premiere went live on our YouTube channel, and that's where you'll be able to find it on the Death Penalty Action YouTube channel. And we'll also be sending out a link just shortly after this press conference is over. And I just want to say, as somebody that has been working in Oklahoma on the death penalty since 2016, when we were able to bring State Question 776, we reduced the amount of support it had from 72 to 66, and happy to talk with anybody about that process and how we were able to accomplish that. And since the resumption of executions as well, we've been present to make sure that every prisoner that is facing execution gets some attention to their case, not just the famous ones. So we want to make sure that everybody gets attention. And our goal today is to make Emmanuel Littlejohn, the next person scheduled to be executed, the next most famous Oklahoman on death row, in particular because he didn't kill anybody. And they're getting ready to execute him. When they offered him a plea bargain that would have allowed him to be ultimately released, and more important, the actual killer in this case got a life sentence, Emmanuel got death. And in both cases, the state said, this is the guy that killed him during their individual trials. We're going to hear more about that and see more about that. And we're right now introducing this video. So let me just start it without further ado, and then we'll be back.
Before you start the video, I was going to tell you that Littlejohn just joined us.
Excellent. Welcome, Emmanuel. We're glad to have you with us, and we're going to play the video now, and then we'll be getting right to you and Jeff.
He said, welcome, and we're glad to have you with us.
Glad to be here. My name is Emmanuel Littlejohn, and I'm on death row for a crime that I didn't commit.
On June the 19th, 1992, Emmanuel Littlejohn and Glenn Bethany conspired to rob the Root and Scoot convenience store in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. As they entered the store, a tragedy developed that ultimately led to the murder of Kenneth Mears.
I went in, then Bethany came in, and then we held the place up. And the next thing you know, Mr. Mears coming down the aisle with something in his hand that looked like a gun. So I take off running, I go out the door, and next thing I know, I hear a shot. I thought somebody was shooting at me, but it was Bethany shooting off inside the store.
Glenn Bethany turned around and fired the shot that killed Kenneth Mears. In that moment, Emmanuel Littlejohn was already outside of the store. The reason we know that shot was fired by Glenn Bethany is because witnesses across the street described the taller man as the shooter and the shorter man as not being the shooter. That shorter man was Emmanuel Littlejohn.
I get back to the apartment, they started telling us that Mr. Mears had died. So I said, Bethany, they told me that you killed the man. He said, I was just shooting at him to make him jump backwards, but I must have hit him.
Littlejohn is scheduled to be executed, having never fired a single shot.
I never said I wasn't a part of the robbery, because I've always said that from the start that I was there. I'm the only one on death row that has been here for 30 years, but I haven't killed nobody.
Oklahoma, we need your help. Emmanuel Littlejohn is scheduled to be executed in the coming days. The only person who can lead the way to stop this execution is Governor Kevin Stitt. Governor Stitt can be reached at 405-521-2342. We need you to dial this number incessantly and demand an end to this effort to execute a man who has never killed anyone.
Ladies and gentlemen, Reverend Dr. Jeff Hood.
Thank you, Abe. I apologize. I'm leaning so close into the screen, but I'm trying to make sure that Emmanuel can hear us too. But I quickly wanted to say that I have been working with Emmanuel for going on 2 years now. He's become a close friend. He is not a perfect man by any stretch of the imagination, but he is also not a killer. And I think that this case highlights numerous injustices in the course of carrying out and pursuing Oklahoma's death penalty. I also wanted to quickly say that from this Attorney General, we have seen a proclivity to pursue cases in which persons not of color are highlighted, and we have seen a lack of pursuit in cases in which persons of color are the focus of the case. Without further ado, I wanted to introduce to you Emmanuel Littlejohn. Emmanuel, can you go ahead and give us an opening statement? Hey, speak a little bit closer into the mic.
Jeff, do you have your speakerphone on?
Hey, Emmanuel, hold on 1 second. Can you hear me now? Okay, I need you to speak as close to that microphone as you can. All right, go ahead.
Down to the table and is wrong. The PA argued that he was the shooter at his trial, and this is my trial.
Okay, Emmanuel, pause real quick. I realize it's a little garbled. Sometimes it's difficult to hear from Oklahoma State Penitentiary. What he is saying is that he was not the shooter. He did not commit the crime, and he doesn't understand why he's been on death row for 33 years for a murder that he did not commit. He was saying that he is begging Attorney General Drummond to pursue a fair conclusion, or pursue a fair sentence in this matter. He's also saying that he is begging Governor Stitt to offer him a commutation or clemency. All right, Emmanuel, go ahead.
I deserve to be dead, connecting to a person that I didn't do. I understand the law of Oklahoma, the right is right and wrong is wrong.
He said he understands the laws of Oklahoma, that right is right and wrong is wrong, but ultimately, this is a question of someone who has been in prison for 33 years for a wrong that he did not do, that he did not commit. Emmanuel, since it's sort of difficult to hear, I was going to let go ahead and let folks ask you questions. Reporters, if you want to put your questions in the chat, we'll go from there. Emmanuel, let me ask you this. There's been some talk of you having brain damage and that being the reason why you should receive clemency and this situation. Would you like to speak to that?
I might be morally, but that got nothing to do with this case. My point is, I didn't kill nobody. Why should my life be sacrificed? And I didn't kill anybody. We need to. I didn't kill anybody.
Okay, he said that he did not kill anybody, that if he has mental defects or if he has mental issues, that should have no bearing whatsoever on the fact that he did not kill anybody. Also, he wants to make very clear that he has sympathy for Mr. Mears's family. And he's also has apologized repeatedly for his role in this. But I think that one of the things that Emmanuel and I have talked about is that Oklahoma continues to want to talk about an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But this is a man who hasn't taken any eyes and haven't taken any teeth. And so how can the state say that when someone kills somebody, they deserve to be killed, and pursue a sentence in which someone who hasn't killed anybody is being pursued to be killed or has been sentenced to death, and the state is pushing to carry out the execution? Emmanuel, do you have anything else you want to say?
That's it.
Yeah.
I'm not the one that killed. It's the mirror.
All right. Can you say that really loud so that we can pick up on it?
They have my dick is sick, but I didn't kill Miss Mirror. I'm sorry, but I did not kill Miss Mirror.
All right. I think that was clear, but he said that he's sorry for what happened, but he did not kill Mr. Mears. It's important to point out that this is a very simple case. We don't have to get into a lot of complexity. This is not a case where we got to bring in a bunch of experts. The state itself argued in one trial that Emmanuel Littlejohn did not kill Kenneth Mears. It's important to point out in terms of the specificity of this case that as far as the trials are concerned, there were two different trials, one for Emmanuel Littlejohn and one for Glenn Bethany. In both trials, the Oklahoma County District Attorney said that each person was the shooter. So in one trial, it was argued that Emmanuel Littlejohn was the shooter. In another trial, it was argued that Glenn Bethany was the shooter. This is absurd, obviously, because there was only one shooter and one shot. So either Glenn Bethany was the shooter or Emmanuel Littlejohn was the shooter. We have evidence that points to the fact that Glenn Bethany was the shooter. So how can you have two people in prison in Oklahoma for the exact same crime when we know that one person is the person that committed the crime? And even beyond that, how can we sentence someone to death? How can we execute someone when we know that there are two people who have been convicted of the crime and only one person has been sentenced to death? Even if there is still an element of doubt or question or whatever, it would seem that the state of Oklahoma, the Attorney General's office, the governor would be hesitant to execute someone when they know it's very possible that that person is not the actual killer, is not the actual person who fired the shot. Of course, it is our contention that Emmanuel Littlejohn did not kill Kenneth Mears. In fact, I would stake my life, my children's lives, on the fact that Emmanuel Littlejohn did not kill Kenneth Mears, did not fire that shot. But again, the doubt and the questions are enough to where it seems absolutely absurd that the Attorney General's office would still be pursuing a death sentence at this point. Emmanuel, do you have anything else you want to say, brother?
It sums it up pretty well. Hey, I'm sorry. I feel this form, but I didn't do it. I did not kill Mr. Mears.
In the coming days, we're going. All right, go ahead and say that again.
I did not do it.
I think that it's important to lastly say that this is not a case of somebody on death row convincing themselves that they didn't do something. This is not a case of someone proclaiming innocence in a situation that is absurd. This is not a last minute scenario in which arguments are being made in order to save his life. This is a situation in which for 33 years, Emmanuel Littlejohn has said that he did not shoot anyone, that he did not kill anyone. Furthermore, for 33 years, the state of Oklahoma has known that Emmanuel Littlejohn did not shoot anyone and did not kill anyone. And they have pursued a death sentence anyways. At the very least, they have known that there are questions as to whether or not Emmanuel Littlejohn was the shooter. Because again, there were two separate trials in which two different people were convicted of the same crime. One shooter, two people convicted of being that shooter, and one is serving life and the other is scheduled to be executed on September the 26th. We are asking the public to step forward. We're asking the public to step up and to realize how great of an injustice this is, how great of an injustice it is to possibly, even if there's a slight possibility of killing someone who did not kill anyone, we should not be executing anyone. We certainly shouldn't be executing Emmanuel Littlejohn. Emmanuel, do you have anything else, brother?
No, I don't.
All right.
Asking everybody to help, reach out.
He's saying that he's asking everybody to help, to reach out to the governor, that he doesn't deserve to die for a crime that he didn't commit. Again, the state of Oklahoma has known for 33 years that Emmanuel Littlejohn is not the shooter, simply based on the folks who were at the Root and Scoot that night, who were across the street, the folks who were the witnesses. I think it's important to also state that this case took place in the 1990s, which is a time in which Oklahoma County was known for having pursued a variety of erroneous cases. And it also speaks to the fact that, we've seen people be exonerated, case after case overturned in Oklahoma County from that time. And Emmanuel Littlejohn is yet another case in which the Oklahoma County District Attorney overstepped and overcharged. And the bottom line is that Emmanuel Littlejohn should not be executed when he wasn't the shooter, and at the very least, when there is a possibility that he wasn't the shooter.
And this is Abe Bonnell. It's a death penalty action. I just want to emphasize again, Emmanuel himself admits freely that he was a part of a robbery. And what's clear from the witnesses, from the witness statements, is that he was not the shooter. And yet the person who was the shooter is serving life. He who was not the shooter is facing execution. And Emmanuel was offered at trial a plea deal that included the possibility of eventual freedom, of eventual parole. So here we have, I mean, that's the injustice here. I think that everybody would recognize that if you're part of a robbery, whether it goes awry or not, you should be held to account for that. But at what level, at what standard are we asking people to accept that execute the guy that didn't actually commit the murder? And from all the sounds of it, the murder was never intended when they went in anyway, which doesn't make it, well, that's the issue here. At this point, what we need is for Governor Stitt to step up and for the Board of Pardons and Paroles to hear what is said at the clemency hearing on August 7th and to recognize that, yes, there are some mental health issues, some brain development issues because of Emmanuel's mother's alcoholism, and we'll hear more about that from Emmanuel's lawyers. But we want to make sure, and Emmanuel wants to make sure, and that's why we have this video that he asked us to make, that everybody understands. He's happy to be held, well, not happy, but he understands being held accountable for participating in a robbery that went awry. But how is it that the shooter, the actual shooter, is getting a lesser punishment than he is? And with that, I think we're ready for questions. And we invite members of the media to put questions to us in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer them.
I'll say this really quick. I think it's also important to point out that Emmanuel was punished for pursuing his innocence. We have a system, again, with these plea deals and these offers in which people are punished for pursuing their innocence. It is absolutely absurd to think that Emmanuel Littlejohn was going to admit to something that he didn't do. He pursues the trial and takes his chances. And then we have a situation in which he's given death. How in the world can the district attorney's office at one point say, this guy deserves life, and then pursue a death sentence? Again, Attorney General Drummond, how in the world can you know that the district attorney's office in the 1990s said that this man was not worthy of the death penalty, not worthy of execution, and now be so just gung-ho and virulent about pursuing a death sentence now? It's unfair, and I think it's important to state that Attorney General Drummond, has a real moral responsibility in this case to let the people of Oklahoma know that this is not a clear case. This is a case in which we have a number of issues, a number of problems, and if Attorney General Drummond continues to pursue this case, to pursue a death sentence in this case, I think the people of Oklahoma need to hold him accountable. He says that he wants to uphold the law, but there is a part of this that doesn't make sense.
Are there any questions? I'm going to run the video again in a moment, but again, just to be clear, nobody is saying that Emmanuel Littlejohn is innocent of being present in this robbery. What is very clear, what Emmanuel Littlejohn did not want to agree to, is the idea that he was the murderer in this case. There was no murder intended. It happened. People get to be held accountable, but the actual shooter is getting life in prison, and Emmanuel Littlejohn is getting execution, and that's simply not right.
Emmanuel also he wanted to say thank you to everybody that attended. We've got a number of folks on the call, and we just want to thank everyone who is out there and who's making the argument that again, Emmanuel Littlejohn did not kill anyone.
And with that, you have Jeff's contact information, and he may be able to arrange further conversations with Emmanuel Littlejohn and certainly to answer questions for himself. We invite you also to connect with the attorneys in this case and get their perspective on things. And we are asking and inviting the public to go to deathpenaltyaction.org, sign a petition for Emmanuel Littlejohn, and we will be delivering those petition signatures to the Board of Pardons and Paroles at the time of in advance of the clemency hearing, and whether or not there's a recommendation of clemency, we will, as we always do, deliver our petitions also to Governor Stitt until he does the right thing, which is to stop this execution and stop every execution.
I was going to say, we've got a question from James Powell of USA Today. He said, for either Reverend Hood or Mr. Bonowitz, given Governor Stitt's sparing use of his clemency power, what do you think it will take to persuade him to use his clemency power in this case? I think that there's two ways to answer this question. One is that Governor Stitt has a moral responsibility to the people of Oklahoma to do the right thing, no matter what he's done in the past. I'm an old preacher. I believe it's possible for people to get saved. It's possible for people to turn from their mistakes of the past. And, I think that Governor Stitt has that opportunity in this case. He has an opportunity to look at a very clear situation in which we have numerous witnesses who said that Emmanuel Littlejohn did not shoot anyone. And so we are simply giving him the opportunity to get saved from killing folk, to get saved from committing these moral atrocities. And I would remind him that in this situation, you're talking about a whole nother level of problematic situation in which, again, the fact that even at the very least, that the possibility that Emmanuel Littlejohn didn't kill anybody should be enough to stop this execution. I think, secondly, I was going to just quickly say that with Governor Stitt, obviously we've been very disappointed in the lack of clemency or mercy that has been granted. But at the same time, we believe he still has the potential for mercy and grace, and we hope that he exercises that in this situation for Emmanuel Littlejohn.
Now, we are hopeful that Governor Stitt will hear from his advisors and from people that support him politically, with the recognition that this is unnecessary to carry out this execution, and that he has the power. Because he has the power to stop it. And we are also feeling very hopeful that a clemency recommendation should be provided. I mean, if others who have received clemency recommendations can get them for the various reasons that they have, then how can you not grant a clemency recommendation to somebody who is not the actual killer? And we recognize, the law of parties. They call it different things in different states. Being present and being part of a crime in which a homicide happens is something that is punishable by death. And that's a problem in the law. And that gets to be changed. That's for the legislature to do. But that's also why executive clemency exists. And I want to say this also. We have seen over and over again in these clemency hearings, the state puts the person back on trial. The word clemency means mercy. It's not supposed to be a retrial of guilt or innocence or a recitation of how horrific the crime was. The question is, who is this person now? In this case, 30 years later, is this the person who committed the crime that ended them up on death row? No, it's somebody different. Has he been well behaved in prison? Is he a future danger to anybody, even in prison? Those are the questions that a clemency board should be asking and answering with their recommendation. And that's one of the disappointments also of the system in Oklahoma and in other states, is you go to these clemency hearings and they're just a recitation of the trial and how awful this person is and what they did 30, 20, whatever years ago. And we need to get back to what clemency actually means, which is mercy. And the governor, should he get a recommendation at the clemency hearing on August 7th, the governor has the power to stop this execution and to grant a fresh start on life, in a manner of speaking. So we are hopeful that that's what he will do. And we are especially hopeful and encouraging that those who have the ear of Governor Stitt will help him see he does not need to prove anything. We know that he will carry out executions. We know he'll carry out executions in cases where there's real questions of doubt. And yet, we're hoping for different leadership in this case. Other questions?
Also wanted to point out before we go to the video that one of Emmanuel's former attorneys, Randy Bauman, is on the call. And, I know that he, as much as anyone, will argue that Emmanuel Littlejohn deserves clemency. He deserves to be saved. He does not deserve to be executed. And I'm thankful that we can all stand together in that fact that Emmanuel Littlejohn does not deserve to be executed.
And with that, we're going to last call for questions in the chat, or raise your hand, or use the Q&A. We want to express our gratitude to everyone who has joined us today. We want to invite everybody that is that can to sign a petition and share it in your own circles, and especially if you have any way to reach the ear of Governor Stitt or any members of the Board of Pardons and Paroles, please do so. We have about a month before the parole hearing and about a little over 11 weeks before the execution. So with that, I'm going to share the video again. You can also find it on our YouTube channel right now, and in a little while it'll be up on our other social media, and it already should be through the broadcast of this particular event. So watch for that and join us in advocating for justice, for mercy and justice, rooted in love in Oklahoma.
Thank you, everyone. We really appreciate your attendance and appreciate your engagement.
My name is Emmanuel Littlejohn, and I'm on death row for a crime that I didn't commit.
On June the 19th, 1992, Emmanuel Littlejohn and Glenn Bethany conspired to rob the Root and Scoot convenience store in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. As they entered the store, a tragedy developed that ultimately led to the murder of Kenneth Mears.
I went in, then Bethany came in, and then we held the place up. And the next thing you know, Mr. Mears coming down the aisle with something in his hand that looked like a gun. So I take off running, I go out the door, and next thing I know, I hear a shot. I thought somebody was shooting at me, but it was Bethany shooting off inside the store.
Glenn Bethany turned around and fired the shot that killed Kenneth Mears. In that moment, Emmanuel Littlejohn was already outside of the store. The reason we know that that shot was fired by Glenn Bethany is because witnesses across the street described the taller man as the shooter and the shorter man as not being the shooter. That shorter man was Emmanuel Littlejohn.
I get back to the apartment, they started telling us that Mr. Mears had died. So I said, Bethany, they talking about you killed the man. He said, I was just shooting at him to make him jump backwards, but I must have hit him.
Littlejohn is scheduled to be executed, having never fired a single shot.
I never said I wasn't a part of the robbery, because I've always said that from the start that I was there. I'm the only one on death row that has been here for 30 years, but I haven't killed nobody.
Oklahoma, we need your help. Emmanuel Littlejohn is scheduled to be executed in the coming days. The only person who can lead the way to stop this execution is Governor Kevin Stitt. Governor Stitt can be reached at 405-521-2342. We need you to dial this number incessantly and demand an end to this effort to execute a man who has never killed anyone.